All right, so this is a test live stream for Monsterologist, and I have using a new app, so I'm testing out how this works. And if everything's set up properly, you should be seeing my iPad screen with Procreate, and then in the corner, I have my phone set up as a secondary camera, which is what's showing up here down in my bottom right-hand corner, but that should also be broadcasting on the stream. I have no idea if if there's a chat. If there is, I can't see it. Look at this thing over here. Yeah, I don't think I can see that. So I guess if you were to do, I'll have to figure that out as I go. But for now, I'm just curious to see how this works. So I don't know what I'm going to draw here. It's a little bit awkward to draw. I'm just not used to drawing on the table. Usually sitting on someplace a little bit more comfortable, but I think it's more interesting to see the screen in the hand. Yeah, so I just gotta get used to what I'm doing here. But yeah, let's change this color to something brighter. A lot of times I'd like to work in black with a black background and white on top. It just makes the and you just add the highlights instead of adding the darker parts. Sometimes it's fun to draw that way. Get this out of the way. And then what I'm doing here is I have everything set up for symmetry on the iPad or on the Procreate app. So everything is, you can see how I draw on one side and it comes over to the other, or it draws the other side automatically. Which is a very, I don't know, it's a very addicting way to draw. Sometimes I think I draw too much with the symmetry, but it's very, there's something very satisfying about it. Yeah, it's one of the things I like about drawing on the iPad is being able to sit back and not be constrained to sitting over a desk. So it's interesting how different it is to do this way. Yeah, so I don't even really know what I'm drawing right now. I'm just kind of trying to draw to get things going. I think what my thought was, just because it's Christmas, that I'll do a Krampus drawing, because I could draw Krampus all the time. Something very satisfying about drawing Krampus. I don't know what it is. But I like to, like what I'm doing here is just blocking out shapes, trying to get the overall shape of the head. And then what I'll do, I mean, this is what's great about using digital, is that you just go, I can erase into what I'm doing. That's why I like to sometimes work with a black background and draw in reverse almost, because there's no drawback since it's all digital. If you use Procreate, here's one tip. If you're in a brush that you like and you want to erase with it, tap the eraser button and hold it, and it'll switch to that specific brush, and you can erase with that one. So yeah, I'm gonna try to start getting some yeah, really what I'm doing now is just figuring out where everything's going to go. And again, it's an interesting process, not starting out how I normally would. It's like if you try to read in the car or something like that, it's just, you got to get used to the location you're at first. plus I'm doing this live streaming. I'm not usually I'm not doing that either. Definitely drawn too dark here. So let's make sure. I should probably pull this out, make sure, yeah, everything's still on screen. Yeah, so I have absolutely no idea if anybody's even watching this. It's pretty late, but and I can't see anything with the YouTube interface, so if anybody's paying attention to this, I'm just doing this. I'm really just kind of testing this out because I've been trying to figure out how to do this for a while, and what I tried earlier in the week was doing, I just recorded, I did just an actual screen recording of the iPad screen, and then I was going to export that, upload it to YouTube. Obviously you can't live stream those, but I was just going to try to record some videos, but the videos files were gigantic, and even with finding apps that would compress them, it was still it was just a bunch of work. And I forgot that I had this app installed, and I never really played with it. And the idea behind this is it captures the video and then transmits it up to YouTube. You can't actually stream from Procreate right to YouTube, or at least I couldn't figure it out. And I've tried multiple times before. So, but there's a lot of times when I'm working, especially when I'm on the road working, that I could, I like to, sometimes when I'm at the hotels, I like to just sit and draw, and I'll just do this where I don't really have any intent of anything to, actually gotta make Krampus has always got to have his mouth open as far as I'm concerned. So this is actually wrong. I've got a bulb that's going out on here, so that's going to be annoying if you're seeing that over there. But yeah, I'll do this a lot of times when I'm on the road working for a vendor event or artist table events, and when I'm at the hotel, I'll just sit and draw. It's kind of just a way to, I don't know, stay in practice. Years ago, like the way I kind of got into doing the monsterologist, like the particular artwork that I'm doing for that, I read a book called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, basically just about the creative struggle. He's or I should say the creative process, and one of those aspects of that is the struggle to just force yourself to create stuff. One of the ideas he has in there is that one of your jobs as an artist is you don't get to wait around to be inspired. Like, that's for amateurs. You have to, like, inspiration comes from sitting down to work. So you have to sit down and work, and the inspiration comes. And he's actually right the more you do this, because you end up, it's so easy to talk yourself out of not sitting down and drawing. You know, you're just not in the mood or whatever. And, you know, his argument is if you are or want to be a professional artist, you got to treat it like a job, and you don't get to just decide when you feel like being creative. And, you know, if you're an accountant, you do the spreadsheets every day. You do them whether you feel like it or not, and you got to get that mentality for yourself for making artwork too. But the idea is, like, and I find this to be true, is that when you're even when you're not in the mood to draw, when you sit down, it only takes about, I would say, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. You kind of shift into that mode of awareness where you're into the drawing. I can't tell you how many times, like if you saw in the one of my recent social media posts, I did a recent Krampus on there, and that was just me sitting down before I was going to bed, and I wanted to draw something. I just felt like I hadn't filled the quota of doing something creative or productive that day, so I was just drawing, you know, whatever came to mind, and that came out pretty cool. But it was just literally something I was drawing when I wasn't initially in the mood to draw. Didn't really have any intent to do it, but you kind of have to just sit down and let the you gotta give the process like room to grow, whatever. You can't always like even now I can like the more I do it too, the more I can feel when it happens. I can feel myself kicking into the drawing mode. It's almost like, it's like you got to get out of that other mode that you're in, where you know you're dealing with what you got to do tomorrow or what happened earlier today. You got to kind of draw it just long enough. It's like they say with exercise or anything else, any other thing you're trying to get turned into a habit. It's like usually you only have to do it for 5 minutes. You know, if you wanted to exercise, just exercise for do 5 push-ups, do 1 push-up, just get it started, and usually you'll fall into line pretty quickly afterwards. But it's the same with drawing. Even something like, you know, that you want to do, it's not, you're not always technically in the most perfect mindset to do it. But there's something interesting, like I said, kind of takes over, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know. Your awareness shifts into, okay, we're drawing now. So it's kind of like when you're on a road trip, like the first half an hour when you're driving wherever you're headed, you're still, you know, mentally you're still back at the house and wondering if you forgot everything and brought everything or anything you forgot. But once you're on the road for about half an hour, then you're kind of in, that's the environment you're now living in. And it's kind of the same with doing this stuff. I'm sure there's people out there that maybe don't struggle with that, but I'm not I'm not one of them. There's a ton of there's so much extra stuff you have to do, and it's not a complaint, but there's a lot of things going on besides just creating the artwork for doing, you know, keeping an art business going at whatever level you're at, you know. Even just down to ordering stuff, you know, like one of the things I've got in the back of my head, even though I technically shouldn't be drawing this right now because I have two other projects I'm trying to finish up, because I want to get a couple new stickers printed up with my next sticker order, and I need to get those done because I have artist table events coming up pretty soon. Gonna surprisingly be started very quickly in 2025 on Oddities and Curiosities Expo events. I have a show in San Diego, which is going to be January 9th. So everything's kind of kicking off almost right off the bat. But I've spent the last couple weeks just kind of getting all my receipts scanned and logged in, and just getting all that stuff to file my taxes later, because I know I'm gonna have a lot of events going on when all that stuff due. And earlier this year when I did that stuff, I waited till the last minute. It was just a big pain in the neck. So I'm just making sure that that was one of my goals for some time in between shows from November until January, is just to get all that stuff done, get some new artwork done. I gotta order a bunch of stickers, and I wanted to get the artwork done for some new ones. So that's what I've been working on too. But there's just a bunch of stuff like that you have to keep track of, and it's easy to get caught up into those you know, the business side of stuff, or whatever, the non-creative stuff. It's easy to get wrapped up into it because it's like you have to get it done. That's what's interesting too, is like that stuff has like built-in deadlines, because you have to order things, and you know, you got to get hotels reserved and all that. So those things kind of naturally take priority, because you have to get certain things done. And it's easy to tell yourself, oh, I'll just draw it tomorrow, I'm not going to do it today, I've got a bunch of stuff to do that has to get done. But I mean, if you think about it, none of it would get done if you didn't have the artwork. So but it's easy to sit down and just think that you have, and I do. I mean, you have existing artwork that can keep you going, but there's tons of stuff that I want to get done for Monsterologist. I mean, there's non-Monsterologist stuff I like working on too, but I have less time for that. But it's just surprising how quickly the days and the weeks and the months fly by. I mean, I was talking with one of my artist buddies yesterday, or a couple days ago, what he was getting done over the time now where he's not doing shows either, and I was like, man, it's gonna be November in like 3 weeks. It's gonna feel like 3 weeks have passed, and it'll already be the end of next year. So much stuff just seems like it flies by. So I've been trying to make it more of an effort lately to really make sure I make time for the artwork. And there's also something interesting that I've been paying more attention to lately too, is that there's that state of mind I was mentioning earlier that you get into when you're drawing is there's something good. It's almost like meditation. Some degree kind of takes you off of that your day-to-day mindset, and I think it's healthy to do it, even though in a weird way it's like I have to do it too, but because it's what I do, but it's also that's part of the reason I have done this my entire life, is just because I find something very fascinating about it. Like, one of the things I've been playing around with lately is I downloaded the Nomad Sculpt app for the iPad. It's a 3D modeling app, and I'm definitely going to play with that some more, but like I said, I have those other sticker projects I want to get done, and it's so easy to get wrapped up into it because it's just, you find a new tool to create stuff, and it's just, for me at least, I don't know, I mean, I think me or anybody else or even if you're not doing it full-time or whatever, anybody who makes art, there's just something about, I mean, I've been interested in doing this since I can't even, my earliest memories were, like, ever since I was a kid, was just being fascinated by artwork, and not even just artwork, but like, how did people do certain things? So it's like, it's really enjoyable to like watch the tutorial videos of the 3D Sculpt app, because you can see, like, seeing how people construct. It was like that when I was learning, I mean, digital art in a certain sense with the right app can be pretty intuitive once you learn the tools. But like, learning vector art was very fascinating because it gives you access to certain things that you may not be able to do by hand. Like, I would not be able to create stuff that is as clean as the vector art that I make. I guess I probably could do it by hand, but I don't know if I have the patience for it. I'm not as I'm not that much of a like a technical, which is also kind of interesting too, because like, this is more up my alley, is doing stuff that's more pencil and loose and paint, maybe, I guess painterly might be a certain sense of it, but like, I like the pencil and paper, charcoal and paper. That's always been my favorite thing to do. And I was, if you've ever seen the Cthulhu that I drew, I have a print of that one. I was talking to somebody at one of the shows, and he was like, "Oh, that must have taken you forever." I'm like, "No, the clean vector art that has all the simple shapes, that takes me forever, because when everything's got such a minimal amount of information. It all has to be perfect. Everything has to be in the right spot. Everything has to be done right. Every little element is pulling tons of weight. But for this kind of stuff, and again, this is a lot of this is not coming out as much as this is a little trickier to work here because I'm working on in a constrained area, but I know I'm just making excuses, but like that Cthulhu drawing that I was referring to earlier, that one was another one of those things that I drew, like kind of just forced myself to sit down and draw and like see what happens. But there's a lot of detail in it and whatever, but it comes more naturally to me. And the clean stuff is not as, I definitely need the tools for those things, but it's fun to learn those things because it opens up new avenues of creating stuff that you may not necessarily have the patience or the technical skills at the time to do. But I mean, now that I've been working in vector art and I've kind of trained my brain to look that way, I'm sure that I would be better at it than I was when I first started. At least being able to replicate it by hand. But again, I just don't even know if I'd have the patience for it. And this is I think my favorite part about working digitally is that there's so many times where you're working on something and it just it's not working or whatever, and I kind of like the discovery process of, like, as far as I'm concerned, this is just a rough sketch to begin with anyways. It may be a little bit more refined, but I'm not, like, I don't know what this is going to be. I didn't know what this was going to be when I started. Aside from just loosely, usually if I can't think of something to draw, I just draw Krampus because there's so many interesting shapes and just, yeah, making them scowl. There's so many, just opens up a lot more possibilities. And there's a lot of things here too that, you know, if I look at this now, I think his eyes are a little bit too far apart, but I think I'm going to play with that and make that part of the drawing, because that's one of the things I like about some of the Krampus masks that I see, is that they kind of have a, let's get into here. You have a nice blend of him being more like a satyr or a fawn. I can't remember which one's which, but like the goat man or whatever. So giving his nose a little bit of a wider brow sometimes works. Like, it's fun to make him more human, but sometimes it's cool to go for more like a mythological demon, because in my head he's kind of like a symbol. It's like a physical manifestation of winter. You know, it's kind of like the idea of like how I think of a Wendigo, where it's trying to capture the idea of being, you know, starving in the winter, as opposed to being a literal creature. Krampus just, I think the animal characteristics can work really well in that. But yeah, this is where, like, sometimes if I was working on paper, I would be more particular about sketching this out and getting the proportions right. But right now I'm just, because that's another awesome thing you can do with working digitally, is you can use tools like you know, like I said, this is called liquify, and this just lets you push things around like it's paint, so you can pinch things and twist your drag things around instead of having to redraw them. That's also one of the interesting things about working with that 3D app is it's interesting how many Like when I first saw it, I played with 3D apps a long time ago, like back when I had computers. I just could never manage the processing power. But now that I've been playing with that one for the iPad, it's really fascinating all the tools that are available and how much I'm not going to say like it does the work for you, because you still have to be, you need to know what you want to accomplish with it. And the people that do that stuff are, there's some super amazing artists making stuff on there. But there's a lot of things you don't have to do. It's pretty interesting. Just looking at all these things down here. Expand, let's try that. Yeah, so that bubbles it out. Yeah, interesting. There's tools like this on the 3D apps too. Just does it in 3 dimensions, obviously. Yeah, lots of cool effects on here. In fact, I forgot that this app even had this, so I usually don't do what I'm doing right now, but it's something fun to play with. Because a lot of times what I'm doing is trying to find out what looks cool. You know, it's like almost like trying to inspire yourself, you know, looking at the clouds and seeing what you see there. I'm trying to get like, because sometimes I don't know what I want until I see it. Like I'm figuring it out as I go. I have a general idea where I want to head. I don't have a fixed destination. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I know exactly what it is. A lot of times that'll happen from having drawn something before and trying to fine-tune it or redo it. Or in the case of doing Krampus, I've just drawn it a bunch of times, so I'm not really starting from total scratch, but just constantly playing around with different ideas. This is actually looking kind of cool now. This orange may be a little too straight. I don't want to go too curvy with them. I don't want to make them into like ram horns, but I don't want them to just be straight out of his head. Yeah, I don't know if that light's gonna drive people crazy, driving me crazy. That's another cool tool that Procreate has, is they have a reference layer, so it'll put a little mini version of your screen on there so that you can work on the details but still see what's going on. And you can zoom in on this one too. You can't not rotate it, but you can zoom. And I think if you tap on it, no, it doesn't. Yeah, some of these apps that do this, when you can navigate, you drag a little viewer window around here and it'd take you to that spot on the full-size image. But this lets you like look at the whole picture while you're working on the details. So you can look in here, because a lot of times what you want to do is see what's working. It's like, you see like the cliche of the artist like standing back with his thumb out, you know, which is what they're doing is they're using their thumb as a measurement tool. So it's like the idea is that they're looking at one thing, seeing how much, you know, the distance between like the cheek and the ear or whatever, and then they're matching it from the canvas to the thing or the sculpture to the thing. So it's just kind of like doing this, you know, with your finger and holding it up. You hold it at your arm's length because it's a fixed distance, so it's not going to shift. So it's just, you know, it's not perfect, but it's going to help you kind of block things out while you're setting it up. But this is similar to this too, is it's being able to like stand away from the canvas and see it from a distance. It's actually looking really cool. But that's helpful. Another super helpful thing is to look at your stuff upside down too. A lot of times you look at something upside down, all the things you looking at things upside down, looking at things after you've had a chance to sleep on them. like looking at it from the next day, even walking at it for 15 minutes and coming back sometimes. Okay, those are a little too cross-eyed. A lot of times I don't like to put the eyes in until the very end or when I'm closer with the face, because it's easy to get caught up on it. Spend a lot of time. Yeah, those eyes are, there's something weird about those things, not in a good way. Let's play with that tool again. And that's one of the things that that looks better. One of the things that another thing I love about working digitally is that I learned this from an art professor, but years ago. He was actually a sculpture professor. He was our drawing professor for that semester. And we had to keep a sketchbook for the drawing class, obviously. But he took us out into the parking lot of the art building. He made us kick our sketchbooks into the dirt and destroy them, because he was like, too many people get. You treat your sketchbook too preciously, and you're not actually experimenting. You're trying to make drawings. You're trying to do things that look good, and you should be experimenting and making mistakes and fixing them and whatever. You should feel more free to do it. And he's like, having a clean sketchbook is not conducive to that. But I try to do that with this digital stuff, is not to get. Even if I like it, I mean, you can always save these things and work on a copy too, which is also nice. But I just try to, even if unless I really like how something's going, what I'll do is I'll just save the layer, duplicate it, work on, turn it off, turn the visibility off, and then just work on a copy of it. Because sometimes I like where something's headed, but I want to try something that might be more destructive than I'm prepared to do. But for the most part, I just try to keep going and make it work as I go. And I might even do, in this case, I might even put the eyes in a separate layer just so I can move them around if I need to. Those are pretty good, actually. One of the neat things about this liquify tool is that it does things that you can't do in Procreate. Like if I was to move the eye, like if I just use the tool that lets me, well, I guess it's mirrored, but I couldn't do what I'm doing and have it mirrored on both sides. This just moves them both like this. But that liquify tool, if you just move one, I gotta choose it. If you do that, it's manipulating both sides, which some of the tools in Procreate are. As much as I like working on with this program, I like it a lot, but there's a lot of things that feel neglected in this thing. Some of the selection tools, like if you were to edit things and move them around, it doesn't mirror them both back and forth. And this program's been around for a long time, and it's very popular. It just seems like they should have more. There's a lot of weird things that are very basic and graphic, like digital painting programs that, for a program that's like one of the most popular ones, I mean, just even period, I think that Procreate, even when you compare it to Photoshop and other ones, it's definitely up there. It's just weird that there's things that are years later they have like a new feature that you're like, why did they put that in there when we still don't have proper selection tools? I'm just unless you use Procreate, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But yeah, you can see here how having this little thing over here helps a lot. So you can look, you can work in deep. You don't have to keep zooming it in and out. You can work on that and still see how the whole overall picture is looking. And if you're not familiar with these drawing apps, what's going on here, this is just changing the size of the brush. So, oops, that's an eraser. Let's put it on the pencil. So you can see that's saying how big it is. And then when I come down here, it just makes it smaller. And then this down here is the opacity. So it's how, I guess it says it right on there, but it's how dark the stroke is. And these are custom, they come with a ton of brushes. These are the ones I use. I just modify these things. You kind of play with them, and there's settings to play with them to make them feel the way they come natural to you. It took me a while to tweak them. Procreate does brushes different than Photoshop too, so it took a while to figure these out. I was just watching a video this afternoon actually about how, I kind of feel embarrassed I didn't know this earlier, about how they size the brushes, and I never realized that this says there's a percentage on this thing here. It says 20, you know, it's the size is not it's not pixel sized like on Photoshop and most of the drawing apps that I've used to using. And the idea is it's a percentage of the canvas, not the screen. But this is, so that should be 50% of the screen. I don't know about that. That's definitely not 50%. I don't. There's something to that, and I'll have to look it up and read some more. But it took me a while to figure these brushes out, just when I first started using the app, because it doesn't work the way Photoshop does. I'm used to it now, but it was weird because Photoshop, you just make specific brushes for the sizes that you want, and that's a little easier. You can still resize them, but it's more. I honestly don't even know how to explain how they're different, but I just know that they are. And it was weird to figure it out at first. Yeah, so here I'm just adding in the, I don't know what the word is for this thing around the outside of the eye. But I have built different brushes, because some of them, like this here is a very detailed brush, so it's that's like the thickest it gets, and then it's very fine. And then the other one I was using before is more for big areas. And then these will slide, that you can set how the maximum and minimum sizes so that they never get bigger than a certain size. You can fine tune when you're working on detail work. So I'm just trying to add in some of the details that you would see if you were, looking at an actual eye. And then the thing that makes it all work is the little highlight on there. That little highlight, it can be the most powerful part of the drawing. Like if you're watching it all come together, just you see that when you put that thing on there, it changes everything. Like if I go back to without it, it doesn't have the same effect once you put it on there. But yeah, you can see how this is a completely different workflow and a manner of working than all of the stuff. Like if you're familiar with my stickers and stuff like that. Oh, I'm working on this eyeball layer, that's why. I'm gonna merge these down. I think I like how that's looking. Just trying to erase stuff that wasn't erasing. I couldn't figure out what was going on. One of the reasons I also like to work with a dark background and bring the light in instead of adding the, because now I'm adding the shadows as opposed to bringing in the light. It just, I don't know, it tends to make things more dramatic and a starker contrast. Yeah, so let's work on a duplicate layer here, and then I want to scale this down a bit. So what I'm going to do here is add some. I'm going to not mirror the screen, and then I'm going to get my giant. So I'm going to add some background in here. Yeah, see that cramp? This cramp is he's a little too friendly. I like the Krampus to be evil. I'm just going to put some loose background in here. That's not looking good. I have to erase some of that. But another thing I'll do too is you can change the opacity on here, so you can fine tune that. I tried to not do that if I can help it, because it will it's easy to forget that you set that, and then you're using colors and tones that you're not matching exactly, because you're matching something that's been manipulated on the oh, and if you see me tapping the screen with 2 fingers, that's how you do undo, and then you tap with 3 fingers and it's redo. So if I did that and tap with 2 fingers, it undoes it, and if I tap with 3 fingers, it redoes it. It's just a shortcut. But see, here, this is why I like to work with a dark background, because you can see how the face is coming out more because of everything else is darker around it. But sometimes working from those, see now, like here, what I'll do is I'll add, it will mirror this, just kind of rough in a body, some shoulders. Because what I like to do too is, especially working digitally, is you can go in and then, because what I'm doing now is doing a lot of the darker areas, but then we'll go in later. I don't know if I'll get to that tonight, but I'll go in and add get one of my smaller brushes, and then you go back in and you can add little hints of highlighted hair and stuff like that, or white hair, or whatever you want to call it, gray hairs, and add those in, and it's got a nice, add some volume to everything without having, it's kind of more of a, I don't know what the right word is, but I'm not going to just draw every hair. I'm just going to add hints of them in there, and then just have enough in there that you get the idea. But yeah, he is not evil enough at all. That's okay though, I don't need to always draw a super evil one. This brush. Yeah, my brushes are not organized very well. These are all named by things that I just was experimenting with, and then one of them stuck and I just kept it. This is the wrong brush. Oh, I'm painting with white, but I don't want to do that. Yeah, that's another tricky thing about working with those layers, is you got to make sure you're working on the right layer, because you can work on the wrong layer, a layer you did not mean to work on, and sometimes that can mess up what you're doing, or it'll just drive you crazy because you can't figure out why things aren't working the way they're supposed to be working. So yeah, hopefully this stream's working. I don't know how much battery I had on the iPad either, so, and I know that I'm streaming from the phone. I can see the battery's going low on that one. Let's see where we're at on this one. We got 50% battery, that's enough. I could plug the phone in while this is going. I didn't think I was going to do this. I was just playing around with the app and the settings, just to kind of figure out how to do it at some point in time. I figured, why don't I give it a quick shot? I was recording some of these privately, just to see what was going on. But I figured, what better way to test it than to go through this? I wanted to see what a long video was going to be like. I am curious if you're able to, if there is a chat or anything, and you're able to see it while you're doing this, because that would be cool. because if people had questions or whatever. But I did one of these many years ago. I think when I first got my previous iPad. But I have no idea what the capability of any of this stuff is anymore, because I haven't played with any of it in years. Most of what I've been doing lately has been doing a lot of the in-person shows, so I haven't had a lot of time. Like when I'm back at the studio, I'm pretty much getting ready for the next show for the most part, or catching up on orders from when I was out of town last. I haven't had a lot of time to think about doing stuff like this. I've had a little bit of a break, because I actually got a lot of the stuff I was trying to get done. Oh, that's why this looks different, because I don't have this tongue hanging out. I'm going to just leave it out for now. But part of the reason I wanted to start doing more, try to do more of this stuff, is because I just, especially as of late, I've been watching a lot of videos on that Nomad Sculpt, that 3D sculpting app, and just watching a lot of artists who put their videos out, and some of them are just watching them work, and that's something that I always, like, I'm fast. I'll watch people do anything, not just artwork. But I know that that's one of the things that I've enjoyed watching on YouTube a lot, is just watching other people do their jobs, doing something. I mean, it doesn't even have to be something all that crazy. I make a joke that I was literally watching somebody install sprinkler systems, because I was just curious how it got done. Just wanted to see how they did it. There's a guy, I've seen multiple guys who cut grass. They don't even landscape. They just cuts people's lawns and put it on YouTube. And I've caught myself watching those in the past. So I'm sure people would enjoy watching the drawing. Not that there's not a million artists doing it out there, but everybody's got a slightly different interest in watching different. Because one of the things I like about especially watching other people do on, with the digital stuff, is when you see them do, when they're solving certain problems, how they're doing things. Cause sometimes you watch someone do something and you're like, oh, that's how they do, that's how they, you see the final result and you're like, how do they do that? Like I was saying earlier, I've just always been fascinated about the production side of things. And sometimes when you see someone do something, you're like, oh, I thought this was going to be a way different process, or way more complicated, or whatever. A lot of times they're just, especially if someone's really, advanced or experienced or whatever, the process they're using is very efficient. You can learn a lot about the tools, like the software in this case that they're using, because you can, they're probably using settings or tools in the interface that you haven't even poked around in yet, because you're still trying to figure out the basics or whatever. So you can learn a lot about what's even available in an app when you watch someone who's been using it for a while. But even sometimes stuff like this, just watching somebody draw, it's just fun to watch. Where it started, where it ends up, because it's even I'm looking at this, and when I saw what I was sketching at the beginning, I was like, is this even worth recording? Oh yeah, there's a gray in the background there. That might be fine. I might leave those ears like that. There's actually something kind of cool about this, where he's more of he's almost got a vampire bat looking thing going on. He's not too bad. Almost looks, his eyes are almost too. Yeah, he's good. I mean, this is something I definitely think I would look at tomorrow, and want to make changes to, but who knows? I don't know. We'll see. Like I said, I don't even know I don't know how long I've been doing this, but I don't know how long I'm going to do it tonight, but there's no, like, very rarely will ever consider it as something finished like the first time I work on it, because there's always something you see the next morning, or even an hour later you go back and see it, you're like, okay, those proportions are off, that's not working, whatever. Yeah, one thing I'll do with these, especially with these symmetrical ones, is I'll use the symmetry but then I'll go in later and add some hairs and stuff that are things that are asymmetrical, so like it just kind of throws it off a little bit. But this is super handy for like and again, it's a certain, I worry sometimes that this stuff can get repetitive being like this, but I don't know, there's something to me fascinating about the symmetry part of it. I don't just do it because it's easy. I mean, I do it because there's something interesting to me about it. Just I don't know why I like seeing the symmetry, and it's not just the oh, and that's just a guideline. If you can see that pink line that's going down the middle. See, here's where you need to, this is when I start getting into going back and getting into trying to carve out those shadows, really make the parts that are shaded, really kind of punch them up. That's one of the, like when I was younger and didn't know about all the different like pencil, I forget all the values of pencil that you get with like the H and HB and 2H and 2B and all that. I didn't understand that stuff, and I was just using whatever pencil you had in the kitchen. But you can't really get dark blacks with, you need that whole set of pencils, like artist pencils. You need them because some of them just like the line that they make itself is, you don't need to crank down on the paper and to get a really dark line. But that's something you can do. It's easy to shy away from making things really dark like this, because if you are working on paper, there's like no going back. But from my perspective, this is where that's where you can really punching up the darkness and the lights and how that contrasts. That's really where you start to really get to make things like have volume and three-dimensionality. But you have to be willing to really make it dark. I might go overboard sometimes, but I think it's cool to have, like, I'll do a lot of these kind of charcoal type drawings, these digital ones. I'll do what you've seen, all the work that I've done, but then even on this one where there's a lot of detail that I've just like, it's disappearing in the shadows, but I want to build the, I'm erasing. I want to build up the, I want to, to build up the foundation. I want to make sure that everything, that when something's highlighted and coming out of the shadows, that it's coming from a believable place. Since it's digital, you really don't have any excuse to because you can always undo it if you went too dark, or like I said, I work on a copy of the layer or the copy of the file even. So now, changing around these opacities and stuff, I think I might be better off with a brush that was more specific to them, but to me, I like knowing that my brush is going to be predictable when I'm doing certain things, and that all I'm doing is changing the size and the opacity. I guarantee that there's better ways to do this than, like, a lot of the stuff that I do, I see people using like tools that will add, like it'll be a big brush that'll do all the hair at once, and they're not like doing individual strands like I am. But I don't know, like, as I said earlier, when I draw, a lot of this is like a process of discovery. I'm doing, like, I don't want to get it done as fast as possible because I'm seeing things as I go, and like as I'm working on something, I'm like, okay, that's working, that's not working. I want to, you know, punch this up more, play this down. Maybe that just means I'm not as maybe other people just have a more complete vision of where they're headed. But a lot of times what I'm doing, like I said, it's like staring at clouds. I'm seeing what's out there and trying to let the drawing kind of draw itself in a certain way. But that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about just sitting down to draw, is that, and that's, you know, the part, what he, that author Stephen Pressfield from the War of Art, that book I mentioned earlier, it's like what he says is like you're basically cultivating, your job is to cultivate your skills so that, like, when you do sit down and draw and inspiration does come, that you can just take advantage of it when it happens. So you're not trying to figure, like, you want to get your skills up to the point where you're not figuring out what to do, you're figuring out how to capture the ideas that are coming to you. And obviously you get to that point at a certain, not that you're not always learning and getting better. I mean, that's another thing too, is you're just practicing while you're doing this. But a lot of times, like I said, I'll sit down, and even this, I didn't know what this was going to be. I didn't know if this was going to be good or bad, or what was going to happen with it. But there would have been nothing if I wouldn't have just sat down and started working. But I definitely didn't have like, oh, I'm going to draw this, and this is what it's going to look like, and this is what I need to do. I mean, you watch me kind of rough it in and figuring out all the details as I was, you know, they were coming to me as you were watching them happen. It's just as in the same amount of time that I was. I had no pre-planned idea. Now, I don't always necessarily work that way, but especially, you know, when I work like this, I almost always work that way. I just decide on general directions. Usually it's like I'll either just I'm gonna draw a Krampus or a skull or a demon or whatever it's gonna be, and then just start going from there. Like when I work with the vector art, I'm usually, by the time I'm working on the vector art, I've already worked out exactly what it's gonna look like. I've done it with this process, though a little different with that, because it's not as you know, it's not like you're doing the charcoal stuff or this charcoal style, so it's definitely more clean, more like you're using markers or clean lines and stuff. So this is a little bit different because there's a lot of leeway in this, because that's one of the things too you figure out too, is like whatever I'm doing is what this is supposed to look like. Like there's no specific, I'm not trying to make this like hyper realistic or whatever. I want enough details in there to kind of sell it, but I'm not necessarily trying to. And you know, just honestly, I don't have that. I just don't have that patience. I don't even know. I mean, I may be capable of it, but it also doesn't interest me. I mean, I can respect people's ability to do it, but I don't know. I feel like this style is more, I mean, it's not the perfect word, but it's more impressionistic. Like, I specifically want to leave things vague on here. Only want some of the details to come out. I like leaving things in the shadow. It's like you think about that movie Alien, the original one, where, you know, the irony is that the reason they filmed it the way they did, and who knows, maybe they would have filmed it that way no matter what, but I've seen behind the scenes interviews and stuff, and the director specifically said that he kept the alien in the shadows because they just didn't have, you know, to make it look, keep it on screen more often it was just obvious it was a man in a suit, so they thought it was more effective to do what they did. But I feel like it was more effective for everything because it left that gap for your imagination to fill things in. I think that makes things more, like, it's more scary that way. Not that Krampus is necessarily supposed to be scary, but I guess Krampus, I mean, he's kind of a creepy creature, but I don't, like, my intent with Krampus drawings is just like, I don't know, like I said, it's all the, because here's what I was saying earlier, like, I'll go in here and not mirror things over, but put things in that are, you know, like warts and stuff like that. It's just all these details are just fun to add to the drawing. And it's like actors say, it's funner to draw or to play to play a villain than the good guy. And it's like, just drawing all these nooks and crannies and all that stuff is just more, to me, is just more fun. So I'm not necessarily, it's fun to get it as just to play with all those aspects. Oh, and there's a menu in here that lets you can customize this to do different things, and I have mine mostly set up just to swap colors from the last one to the next one. So this switches up, you can see in the corner, it switches from black to white. But if you had a different, whatever the last color you use, it'll swap back and forth. So if you were to pick pink and do this, it would swap between those two colors. But since I'm using just black, well, I'm not using white at all. In this case, I am, like I said earlier, just to add some highlights at the very end. I don't even want to have those on here right now. But yeah, it's just fun to draw these all the wrinkles and the scars and all that stuff. But again, I'm trying to draw just enough to give just a hint at it, because there's not much, I mean, there's detail in there, but it's more, like I said, it's more impressionistic than it is. I'm not drawing every little wrinkle and pore and, you know, every detail of the skin. In fact, and that's another thing too, on these apps, you can have texture brushes that can do that, where it'll give a skin texture. And I mean, this brush itself has a texture, you can kind of see it in there. It's almost like a paper or canvas texture. But I don't know, I want it to be more, I guess, like I said, impressionistic is the best way I can explain it. Just I want it to be, I'm looking for the overall effect, as opposed to like, this looks super real. I'm not really concerned about it looking super real, but it has to look enough to be, you know, convincing to like, it needs to be real enough that the shadows work, is really what I'm working on mostly. Yeah, I don't know. He's not too bad. Yeah, sometimes adding all these details in, even though technically don't want to work on all this stuff right now. Sometimes it helps to see it in context, especially as things get more finished. Because this gives you more of an idea where his shoulders are and his neck and stuff like that. Even though I'm not going to actually have them in there, but so now here's where I would go into a second layer, not mirror it, but now add some hair that's going to be, and I put it in a second layer because I might want to go back and tweak these things, but I want some of it to go overlap on top of it. I don't want to have to worry about it, so now I can just put this on here, still work on the layer below it, and not have to worry about redoing the hair or any of this stuff. And then here's again where I would go into adding some of the white highlight hair. Not a ton of it. It's really, it's just gonna catch a couple of, it's just gonna catch it a little bit. Just want to have enough that you're giving me. Oh, I didn't have the mirroring on. Let's do that over. Oh, that's right, turn it off. I found myself using that pop-up menu to turn. I used to have the mirroring turned on and off through that, and I found myself going on this menu and turning it off by accident, and then working on the drawing for a long time and realizing that I wasn't working on the mirrored version. So I took it off that menu. See, now here's the problem too, is where this brush ramps up in the amount of even this one's not that great. Like that's too, I don't want that much. I just want a little bit of white on there. Just kind of want to imply his beard, his facial hair, or whatever, with some of these highlights. So I don't want it to be very. It should just be like catching the light a little bit. And again, this just gives it a little bit more volume, more depth, more dimensionality, whatever the right word is. And again, this is another great thing about all these digital apps, because now I can just draw this white right on top of it. And obviously you could do that with paint, but if you were to work in charcoal, no way you'd be done. I mean, they sell white charcoal, but you're not gonna put white charcoal on top of dark black charcoal like this. So his horns still haven't been worked on, but this came out pretty cool. So yeah, again, I hopefully this all worked out. This was primarily a test for the streaming and to see if it was working with the two camera setup. With this secondary camera up here is my phone, which is I'm using an app that is grabbing the screen from the iPad and then wirelessly pulling from the phone and merging the two and then streaming that to YouTube, which is crazy, but it's a but it seems to be working. The test that I did seemed to work, so hopefully it's working now. And maybe what I'll do is try to set up another one of these things, maybe announce it ahead of time and try to finish this thing off now that this is gotten to a pretty good point, because yeah, he's looking pretty cool. I can already see things I want to change though, but it's getting late. But yeah, so maybe what I'll do is try to schedule a time to go back into this and finish it up, or work further on it, or whatever. So, all right, well, if anybody stopped by, I hope you enjoyed. I'm probably just going to leave this on the YouTube channel. You know, you can just watch it later. So, even though if you didn't catch it live, so I'm going to hit stop now and figure out how to do that.